We're already live. I didn't know it. I see all these people here, but we're also on the internet. It's ridiculous. Anyway, it's good to see you all here. It's nice to have so many people in such a small place, and then even after Corona. I mean, it makes me really happy. Nice to see people in person and also on the internet again. We've had some comments about regulars that it's so annoying that we have a live stream and that we are talking into cameras instead of into faces. Keep doing that. Also, if you're not here, feel free to keep joining us from home because we also like you from home. So yeah, we all want to, well, welcome you because we're welcoming. Anyway, this is the Amsterdam Ruby meetup of February 2023. I forgot about the date. I have a watch for that. Oh, the 21st. Good, nice. It's going to be much like usual. We have two talks. One is going to join remotely, so that's okay, I hope. Let's hope that the technique will be working. And we have one speaker that will be here. But we also have two sponsors. That is new for us. So the fun thing is, OfferZen, you may or may not know them. They are trying to, well, become a big org in Europe. And we have Stevie here from OfferZen to introduce themselves to y'all. Yes.
Thank you, Arno. Thank you all for having us in your meetup. We're very privileged to be here. As you can see from our banner over there, not the one with the dinosaur pretending to be a unicorn, the one that says Community First Marketplace. We're a community first business. That's my role. I'm the VP of Community. Don't know what it means yet, but we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
But essentially we make a lot of t-shirts. As you can see, this is the one that's available tonight. It's our Ruby community t-shirt. We have a t-shirt for a lot of our different communities. And essentially what we do is we help developers get jobs at cool companies, and cool companies build their tech teams. We started in South Africa, you can hear by my accent. I moved here 3 years ago, and we've been growing in Europe since then. We call it Middle Earth, which is the time zone. It's Africa and Europe. I don't think it's the official name, but that's what we call it. And yeah, we're growing the business slowly, but solidly. We're about 2,500 companies that hire through us, so there's a lot of optionality. When I say slowly, I mean like not like Gorillas and Flink and those kinds of companies. Like normally, I suppose is probably a better way to do it.
Not like a disease.
Yeah. Well,
sorry, my words.
Too soon, man. Too soon. So anyway, so if you are looking for a new team or you want to add some people to your team, that's where you can find us. And if you're not doing either of those two things right now, we do a bunch of stuff in the community. We make a bunch of documentaries. Last year we made Laravel and Svelte documentaries with the core teams. This year we're going to make TypeScript. And we're going to talk to some other open source frameworks and languages, and we try and do a bunch of cool stuff in the community just to add value to the community over the long term, and hopefully that pays back. So we try and pay it forward, and hopefully it comes back and helps us build our business. So that's what we do, and one of the businesses that we work with is Reaktor, and we're pretty stoked that they're having us tonight, so thank you very much for having us. And it's really cool that we can connect people within the community, because that's what we're about. And thank you for your dedication and your team's dedication for always putting these on, because it's hard work to keep it up. You don't get paid for it, so we're happy to support and buy the beers and pizzas and things. All right.
Well, at least I'm fed. Thank you for that.
It's a pleasure. I hope you like the pieces. I'm going to hand over to Billy from Reaktor. Come up and say his name right.
Yeah, it's Billy. Yeah, absolutely. As if I ever forget a name.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to begin talking while I stand up. Hi. Hello. My name is Billy. I work for Reaktor, and I'm going to keep it very short. And I don't know if it's going to be sweet, but I'll keep it short for sure. I work in recruitment, talent acquisition. For Reaktor, we're a 22-year-old Finnish company who consults. We build complex software projects for international clients. You can find us. You can find on our website the people that we work with. You can learn a little bit about how we're tech agnostic, for example, and how we like to prioritize the community and the people who work with us. But yeah, hopefully instead of me telling you all these things, you'll kind of feel the warm atmosphere and you'll have a nice time here tonight, and you'll kind of, through the space, understand a little bit more about what we're doing. So yeah, feel free to look at the pictures of the wall as you go in and out. Feel free to talk to people if they work at Reaktor and ask them some things what it's like to work here. But yeah, in summary, it's just really lovely to see you all. This is the best part of the work is when you see people coming in and enjoying the space, and potentially future colleagues are in this room as well. So yeah, if you do decide that you like it and you want to apply, please find it on the website. I'm sure that through OfferZen or even through the meetup you can figure out a way to do so. Or come talk to us this evening if you want to talk about not even just working at Reaktor, but actually just learning something more about what we do and how we do it. But yeah, this evening is not about me and making speeches and recruitment, it's about you enjoying some proper content. So I hope you all have a lovely evening, and thank you so much for coming.
Nice. So, long story short, Stevie ensures that we have pizzas. Billy ensures that he gets the stains out of the carpets. So be careful, because you will probably meet them next meetups again. And also it's good to know that we're being sponsored by 2 companies, and they send recruiters instead of people that want to get rid of people, which is also nice, I guess. I mean, it makes me feel happy. Anyway, that's just me. Hello. Let's continue with the rest of the show. This is the Amsterdam organizing team. We have Tom over here. He's now doing some video things over there. Thank you for setting this up, because I couldn't get my Linuxy thing to stream. It's a thing. There you have me. Floor, she's not joining this evening because she's somewhere else in Middle Earth. And then we have Rayta over here, who just could barely make it. But yay, I'm so happy that she's here. Yeah. What to say? Yay! Yeah. And given the fact that I'm just standing here, I usually keep this very brief about myself. I heard some people, okay, so now how long are you doing this? I figured out that I'm doing this already for 6 years. Not Ruby development, but emceeing the Amsterdam Ruby meetup thingy. So it got me thinking that I'm doing this already 14 years. Developing software. I've been working for 7-ish companies. Currently, I'm a freelancer in between jobs. And
Hey, are you sponsoring?
with time, mostly. Dedication, potentially. But yes, I may be sponsoring. And I hope that in a very, very far future, there's still something that I can write, and it has to do with renewable everything, so to say. So that is what I care about. Anyway, now you also know who I am, because usually during meetups, I don't mingle. So now I've mingled. Hosting this thing is just a big facade for me, so it was quite scary. Sorry for that. Anyway. Yay, join our Slack. If you're not on Slack already, join our Slack. If you're watching from home, maybe not live, but eventually, that's also good. Go to slack.amps.rb.org and join us in the Amsterdam channel, though you will see me posting things in general just to get some fuzz about our events as well. But this is where all the discussions can happen, and you'll probably also find this evening's speakers there, right? Right. Anyway, yay, we have a code of conduct. Talking about a code of conduct, let's get my clothes off. So we have a pledge, we have some standards, you see them over there. Examples of behavior that contributes to creating a positive environment include using welcoming and inclusive language. It's just about to get that t-shirt on, come on. Being respectful of different viewports and experiences. Well, all the things that you usually do at work, you can also safely do them here. Or as someone said, if there are things that you want to say to your mom, you can probably also say them here. Yeah? If there are things that you do not want to say to your mom, you probably can just keep them from when you're home. That is, long story short, our code of conduct. And it's there because we want to be welcoming. We want to be a welcoming community of rock stars. Here you have it. Anyway, good. This evening we'll have 2 talks. The opening statements are done at 9:15, which is 2 minutes ago. Then we immediately switch to Aleks. Aleks, I've been asking him, so how do I pronounce your name? And then 3 different versions came out. He said, no, it's all cool. And I'm like, okay. He's from a time when computers are actually big. Documentation was also a thing, but it was on paper. And testing, there was just a bunch of people. And now he's going to talk about how Cucumber prevents repetition. So this is just a talk about dry and about testing, and just about, well, what happened long ago. And then after the break, I'll probably introduce Gys. I hope I am pronouncing his name right, but he's not here. But that will be for after the break. So I want to have a bigger hand of applause for Aleks. Aleks.
Fantastic. Good evening, everybody. You can do better. Good evening, everybody. Yay! Fantastic. Amazing. Nice to see you here. As Arno said, my name is Aleks. Yeah, indeed, I come from kind of funny old times. And before I start, let me tell a few words about myself. Well, actually, I'm solution bloody architect, and what it means, I don't know, and probably I'm just paid to stay away from developers, not to disappoint them. And in my career, I've spent, well, I think worked with any major programming languages, but at the moment, sort of, you know, my full stack comprises Outlook, PowerPoint, and Slack. So I'm not allowed to do anything else. Yeah. Why I wanted to talk about this, because I was triggered on the previous Ruby meetup by a conversation with a random dude. And he like pitched to me a problem that, yeah, you know, I'm doing a cool stuff, but I have a problem with acceptance testing. And I said, well, you're a solution architect, well, can you help me? And I said, okay, sure, have you used Cucumber? And he looked at me as if I am mentally retarded, probably for five seconds. And I said, of course I have tried Cucumber, what do you think? You know, architects are nut jobs, right? But he thought I'm talking about cucumber as a vegetable. And I was referring to Cucumber as a testing framework. So, and this actually brings me here to tell you that this old stuff actually still works and can be moderately used. So personally, I used it last time when I was working in this exciting company that does something with transportation in and out of Schiphol. And I was doing something critical to the continuity. I can tell you more, but then I'm going to kill you. So anyway, explain in few slides where and how I actually came to Cucumber. It all started when I was looking after the API gateway, and it was probably 2017. And we have realized that, well, you know, things are not running well, and we just didn't know what. Is it network? Is it gateway? Is it backends? We needed some metrics. Okay, so how hard can it be? So we can take Grafana, we can just extract some metrics, and we have nice dashboards, all right? Guys, who have tried using Grafana? Okay, do you like it? No, okay, that's a good answer, because I can tell you why you hate it. The thing is, if you try to use Grafana to monitor API traffic, you will find that sometimes infrastructures are built in a way that use context path-based routing. Do you know what it is? Right? No? Or should I explain? Right, looks like I have to. Well, the context path-based routing is when you have a fancy load balancer and takes a look at some prefixes in your path and sends it to different backends. It is not something super exciting, but what is exciting is that somewhere within your REST API paths you have identifiers, and they look like this. So what's going to happen if you're going to load this into full stack index? Huh? Is it queryable? Well, technically yes, but not really, because it's a full text search. If you have a pretty small collection, you still can do it. But what I was confronted with, I was running at 4,000 records per second, and then that was considered low traffic. That wasn't working for me. So I came up with the idea that, well, raw input is unsearchable. I need to put some kind of that will essentially tell me service and an endpoint. That's kind of literally two data elements that I wanted. And if I'm going to run very simple lookup index, that's going to be brilliant query, of course. We can get a logstash, we get the RSpec. I had to buy RTFM book to read about it, because before that I didn't do any development, and I started hacking. So logstash, as you know, by the way, who has experience with ELK? Yeah, okay, I see a few hands. Who wants to hear what ELK is? Oh, that's a shock. Yeah, so ELK stands for Elastic, Kibana, and Logstash, and this is super framework for built-in dashboards and built-in time series data. And essentially, I can tell you from my experience, if you do it right, then you will get your users protesting if you try to remove it from them. It's a great tool. What you need to know here is it's a tool that visualizes traffic. So let's say if you want to, say your boss comes to you and says, well, why this service is down? First of all, you need to identify if it is down, then what exactly is down, which applications are down. You're following, right? And doing dashboards in Kibana on top of Elastic database makes it super fast. It's almost kind of must-have for any serious operations. Logstash is a log processing tool that is natively connected to it, and through that you can actually prepare your messages. You can take raw data, you filter it, and you prepare it for easy querying. Okay? You with me so far? Yeah? Right, so kind of course, explaining ELK would be a little bit outside of what I have originally intended. However, the beauty of it, it is all Ruby. So you need to know a bit of Ruby to write filters. They're not that complicated. Because for my case, all I wanted is, well, I have some kind of a path, I have a pattern, I just kind of put a few text to it. How hard can it be? And I have RSpec. Who is using RSpec here? All right, next question, who likes it? Guys, hands in the air, you all like it. Imagine you walk out in the projects and you find no RSpecs. What would you think about previous developer? Yeah? Okay, so kind of you should, you should like it a bit more, yeah? So, anyway, just to show to you that when I started looking, it's, well, you get some kind of JSON and here's a structure, you run it through the filter and you expect to get something out of it, no problem. Kind of, we're doing great. Okay, and as after you really have written your first RSpec test case for Logstash, you said, oh yeah, you know, I'm a superhero, I can do everything. And you started adding more and more and more test cases. And initially it all goes great. You keep reading documentation about ELK. You see that, oh, right, we have even possibilities to configure a mock filtering pipeline. So we can do, kind of literally, we can just unit test the whole thing. It's a dream, right? So I was actually thrilled because I could say, well, I can just, you know, be very sure that's what I'm gonna be putting into production, because 4,000, you know, ticks per second. It's very expensive to reprocess, even if it is just the monitoring data, because I need it. And it's kind of elegant code. Even, you know, 6 years from now, I'll look at it. It just looks beautiful, right? Kind of almost nothing to do. And yeah, it's like you keep going. You start actually loving it. You love the simplicity that you receive a hash, or which is a key value pair. You run it through the pipeline, and it spits out, and you can verify that whether or not you got it. All right, I'm gonna pause for a second. Guys, do you think everything I showed you actually worked?
No.
No.
Okay, that's the correct answer, but why?
Otherwise, you wouldn't have asked. You haven't met the cucumber yet.
Yeah, well, you haven't met cucumber. That's a long way to cucumber. That's a long way to cucumber, yeah? Any idea? I was testing the wrong thing, and I just wasn't realizing it. Well, I was looking for kind of how to take it across, and actually I work with plethora of programming languages at the same time. I actually found this example. It is written in Java. I know it's in Java, and it's intentional. The thing is, what I explained to junior developers, the pitfalls of unit testing. In this whole screen of text, you have only just one line, which is subject to test. Do you know what it does? Well, can you guess what it does? Now, can you guess what this thing does? I don't.
That stuff.
Yeah.
Setup.
Yeah. And what does this thing do?
Checks that it's
And this is the form of actually unit testing that I frequently see with the beginners. It's called unit test in magic numbers, because you got some magic numbers in, you get some magic numbers out, and you have unit test around it. Should it be here? I don't know. And there is another flavor of it, which is called testing with mocks, and this is where I also regularly see this. Well, believe it or not, this is actually in Java world. This is completely, frequently occurring case. You see developers who said, "Well, you send me anything, I'm going to give you the right response." Right, and then we get these kind of discussions with Aleks, and this is, I told you, I'm paid to stay away from developers. Now you see the picture why. When this dude saying, "Well, my unit test is covered," kind of really saying, "Well, what are you actually covering here, right?" And of course, kind of nobody is completely free from failing, because when you just start, you don't really understand the domain, and you may just maybe testing the wrong thing. In reality, it actually turned out to be much harder than I thought it would. So first thing, after I have kind of proudly installed it in a monitoring environment, nothing worked. Well, the data didn't make any sense. And then I realized, okay, we don't have actually one gateway, we have two. Nobody told me this. Okay, interesting. I said, all right, I can get some more RSpec tests to help it. And then an interesting thing has come up. Okay, we actually have multiple load balancers in between. So the access path is not as linear. So, cool stuff. And our collection points. We're not capturing traffic from the API gateway. We're actually capturing before and after. So we have duplicate. Guess what happened to our specs at the moment? How did it look like?
Green.
Green, yeah. So did I get any data, any useful data out of it? No. Obviously. And I just realized, look, I'm just an idiot, because I'm teaching to the juniors that, well, you don't need to write unit tests that work with magic numbers. But if you work with, let's say, with infrastructure monitoring, you work with bloody magic numbers, because you bloody look with IP addresses. So if it is from this IP on this load balancer, then it should be this. No, something wasn't right. But it didn't end there as well, because we have realized, well, we don't have just one data center, we have 3 in different countries. And on top of that, they don't use the same monitoring stack. Why? Because it's enterprise, yeah? So we can't just have one. How many have heard about Fluent? Nobody? Oh, I see one hand. So Fluent is a rough analogy of Logstash. It's also, by the way, written in Ruby. So it looked like now I have to write actually 2 different filters for 2 different products with Ruby programming language. And fundamentally, we're still looking at just one bloody case. All I want is, I just want to have some kind of assertions that I will get just the good statistics. How hard can it be? This is just bloody tagging of the event. The answer is very. Because in the end, what I have realized, well, we also have VPN connections, and kind of they cannot be monitored. But then this realization, it didn't come from RSpecs. It came from something else. And that was the point where I said, well, I wish I knew Cucumber at the time, because it would have saved me a lot of frustration. Look, if you start describing this in different permutations, you have probably 8,000 production endpoints, and you try to cover this, you have a mess with RSpecs, and kind of you lose understanding what you're actually testing. First of all, these are magic numbers. There are lots of them. Some of them you have written 3 months ago. Some of them you have written a week ago. Just doesn't make any sense. So when I started looking, look, I need to take a step back. I'm writing way too much unit tests. How can I optimize it? So I have actually started coming up with this interesting YAML structure. I said, well, kind of obviously, let me take a step back. As I said, well, what is actually happening here, right? So what are the traffic patterns? And as I was kind of writing this, I said, well, look, we have this and this situation, that situation, and if I get this input on this appliance that captures and kind of finally I started seeing the big picture. I started seeing what is happening. And in the end, what I have done, I have ditched all the RSpecs and I have written probably 300 lines long interpreter of these YAML files. So what I have achieved with it, instead of having 3,000 lines of code, or maybe more, of RSpecs that kind of I don't understand what they do, I have one RSpec that I can suddenly scale by YAML files. So I can take YAML file, I can go to SME and say, look, tell me how the routing is organized. So if I connect from here to here, kind of where does it capture? So we can actually sit together and work. Yeah, fantastic. I can ask for help, and that was most important. And the big picture. Yeah, and the big picture was that I really had to see that the numbers that come, they actually mean something. So IP addresses, they mean ranges. And they ranges means origins from certain data centers, etc. So I cannot obviously freely talk about that because infrastructure is confidential. But then it was a breakthrough. It worked. After I have done it, it worked. But then there was a moment where kind of I was so proud of myself. Look, I have solved this. I've come across a good Java developer who told me, look, Aleks, in all honesty, it looks like you have just reinvented the wheel. You have just, this is everything that you have written, just a cucumber. First of all, it was a shock, kind of, how come it is already invented? And then it was the same moment, cucumber? What do you mean cucumber? Do you mean cucumber is a vegetable? Well, obviously she didn't. And we right now come to the point, why cucumber, what is cucumber? Question, guys, do you know what cucumber is? Not vegetable, but framework. Okay, good stuff. Do you like it?
Yes. No.
Okay. Those who like it say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Oh, you don't like it. So why do you don't like it?
You have to write the same thing twice.
You write it in text, then you write regex is to parse your text, and then you
Yeah.
write code to deal with your regexes.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff gets lost in translation. It's a
Correct.
disruption.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Very valid. Very valid point. Yeah. Somebody else, please.
Easy for somebody to make mistakes with a test, like with a spelling mistake or something from Rayta.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, definitely. Somebody else?
It has nothing to do with cucumber per se, but it was the fact that a team of 2 people who had been hired as QA tried to force us to rewrite all our hundreds of thousands of lines of RSpec into cucumber because it would be easier for them to read.
Okay. Definitely. Very valid. Very valid point. Anybody else? Guys, I need some dirt. Otherwise we won't have a conversation. Yes, please.
I don't think you use a cucumber for unit test.
Obviously you don't. Yeah.
There was a promise that our PO was going to write the tests for us because it was natural language and it never happened.
Yeah, indeed. Right now we have an option of a chat GPT, yeah, so maybe we can try. Yeah. So anyway, guys, more. I need more. Huh?
I prefer avocados.
Yeah, we all prefer avocados, yeah.
Bus station.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant, actually, brilliant. The whole point is that if you look at the cucumber, the first impression is it just doesn't make any sense, and kind of this idea that, well, if you get a QA who actually has it on the CV, probably they will try me down your throat to do this, with all these benefits of it. And yeah, it is a very valid point. You shouldn't use it always. But there are a few cases when it becomes instrumental. And kind of it all depends in the end on what is your problem. What is your problem? and kind of is it actually fit for purpose? Because there are situations when it just makes no sense. So, what Cucumber is all about, for those who don't know it, it is a BDD framework, or rather, let's say, the BDD style framework that has the idea that you first will describe what you're trying to do in kind of natural language. And we have a very good criticism that bad description will not lead you anywhere. So it needs to be structured. I'm going to touch upon it. It is easier to read, definitely, than RSpecs. And it is an opinionated statement, but if you use it right, it can help you in some circumstances. And the last element that was mentioned today, it requires what is called a glue code. Glue code is yet another form of unit test that kind of you actually write, as you guys correctly have said, to parse these natural expressions. So are we making anything simpler? Anybody? Does it sound simple? Come on, guys, say it. No. Simple? No, exactly. It actually becomes a bit more. A bit more complicated, because suddenly you have also another structure how to approach it. You have a feature, you have a background to the feature, you have a scenario, and you have an example table. So how does it fit? Because let's go back. We have a scenario where I have only, in fact, one bloody method called filter, and I have to test it with different inputs. So why would it happen? Well, it turns out that Cucumber does have a field of applicability if used sparingly and for correct purpose, because it can take out what is called a huge amount of repetition. Remember, in my case, I was showing to you these diagrams and how this kind of understanding of the landscape has been growing. You try, well, my problem was I was trying to write the same test again and again and again and again and again, but with different Ruby constructs. And what I have realized is that I have written something 3 months ago. If I come back, I just don't remember what it was. What that particular piece of code was trying to do? No clue. No clue. And Cucumber, and before it I had a YAML file, it was sort of an attempt to do exactly this. Why did I think it should work this way, right? So obviously I did not port my implementation to Cucumber, but what I can show to you is how it might have looked like. So indeed, it becomes a quite a wordy story. But what's important here is that on the top, you can write a small reminder for yourself. What actually you're trying to do. Then you have a background. So kind of you have a traffic that goes from A to B on a particular address, and something happens. And you have a scenario. So what that scenario is, you have a developer who is trying to invoke a call, and it comes from a data set, it traverses here, here, here. And in the end, you have an event that enters a login system, and then it should match certain criteria. Yeah, so these are your when conditions. But for me, really, again, for that particular case, for me, the winner was the example table. That was like something that I said, well, I wish I knew it. Because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to say, okay, I have traffic A, traffic B, I have permutations. I can just summarize them here. I can follow it. And if I come back to it 3 months after, I can refresh it. It goes much easier. It is not a clear winner, of course. With any programming language, you can achieve the same results in different ways. But in this particular case, it was quite instrumental. So what I have found in the end, that in fact a lot of stuff could actually be fit into a screen worth of screen worth of text on television. Well, you don't need to read it because the text is way too small. And that would have saved me kind of a lot of frustration of trying to do it and trying to reinvent my own Cucumber, right? Now, of course, you can say, well, Alex, so you didn't do it for real with Ruby? Yes, I didn't do it. Why do you think I dare to stand in front of you guys and say, well, it certainly works? Because it did. I want to tell you about some heavy stuff that I used to apply it to do infrastructure automation for the same company. And let's say when you have massive infrastructure built over tens of years, tons of exceptions, there's no logic at all. And you're forced with a situation that you actually need to prevent people from making mistakes. You want to perhaps write some kind of rules. But how do you test them? Because in fact, what we're looking, we started looking again at let's say, automated deployments. It's actually good that I used that thingy before I started looking into automated deployments, because it clicked. Said, look, I'm right now looking again at essentially every repeatable test. We have input, and we need to produce a deployment descriptor, right? But we have such a variance in the inputs that probably it would be a good idea to start with Cucumber in the first place. So when we completed the project, and we had counted that we had approximately 350 rules that were covered about 500 different Cucumber scenarios. They were taking about, I think, 20 minutes to run. And that thing, I think right now is 4 years old. 4 years, no major incidents in deployments. That's kind of cool thing. So, is it a winner? Should you use Cucumber in all your testing? No. Cucumber is not a replacement for RSpec, but where it actually excels, it takes away a lot of the repetition in your testing, especially if you have to do permutations and say, well, for this particular customer, I'm going to make an assumption, I need to do this, but for somebody else, I'm going to do 80% the same with a bit different. It helps you to write it and express it in a way that is perhaps easier to remember 3 months after. But it comes at very, very high cost. It requires a good domain grammar. I cannot overemphasize it. Whoever tries to write Cucumber and doesn't understand the domain, you can see it immediately. Why? Because the scenario is mumbo jumbo, right? Okay. So we didn't get the domain. But if we do, then we have a rigid grammar. We can easily handle repetitions. And finally, we can answer the question of Alex. What are we trying to test here? Because, well, this is just a valid business scenario. These are our inputs, these are our outputs, and these are our assertions. Yeah, beautiful. So, and of course, it does help QA to write as code, but as usually, it's just a tool in the hands of people, and a fool with a tool is still a fool. Which brings me to the perhaps the last slide of this talk. Yeah, why would you need a Cucumber if you already use RSpec? Well, you would if you do a lot of repetitions, and if you have a lot of kind of branching, and you can come up with a rigid grammar. If you can't come up with a rigid grammar, it might be an idea for you to express those type of rather acceptance testing to your system. But definitely Cucumber is not a replacement for RSpec. You still write unit tests. Just take the tool which is for the job at hand and use your head, because the answer you will not find in ChatGPT. So on this note, I want to say that this is the story that I wanted to share with you this evening.
Nice. I see a question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
Okay. So I haven't looked into Cucumber for a long time, so
Yeah.
Maybe I'm outdated, but
Yeah.
my understanding was always that it's a layer on top of all your tests that you add to it to have business people or other domain experts provide input to your specs, basically, because like specs is something that a developer should be able to produce, but then
the domain isn't necessarily the thing that's where the experts and the developers can meet, right?
Correct.
Is that still the case? So is it still a layer on top of your specs, or is the implementation different?
Well, your question is Cucumber is in implementation on top of your unit tests?
Yeah.
Well, the answer is yes, because you still have to write a glue code, and every single line in this specification is, well, in fact, is something that has to have a code attached to it with our regular expressions that we all love. And it just doesn't work without it. So yes, it is a bolt-on on top of a unit test.
So every line becomes an assertion, basically.
Yes, it is a step. It's either absolutely either you do it or you verify something, and it takes a bit of let's say practice to get used to writing the glue code, because it's frustrating to get started. You don't understand what you do, or kind of you say, well, how can this possibly work? Yeah, of course. And yes, you are correct. You can use Cucumber to sit together with, let's say, with the users and try to elicit, let's say, test scenarios. Well, does it work? Well, it depends on the people, right? So it goes down to, do they understand what they're doing? Well, kind of, it's a completely different question. Are you satisfied?
Yeah.
Okay. Next.
So sort of following on from that, if you're using Cucumber and RSpec in a sort of mixed environment, would you advocate for, say, using Cucumber for the higher level tests or only for the repetitive with lots of permutations kind of tests? Because obviously you wouldn't use it for testing like a calculation to make sure the method returns the right result with the calculation.
Right, excellent. So your question is, does it make sense to convert a regular unit test into a Cucumber test? And the answer is, really, it depends. It depends on the problem that you are actually trying to solve this with a function. I'm going to give you the example with my current project where it doesn't happen at the moment. And what I find very frequently is when you have very complex, let's say, data integrations which involve a lot of the mapping, eventually nobody understands why the mapping actually works. And when you get business users saying, well, you know, I have this and it doesn't work, well, how does that actually translate into the pipeline chain, right? Can anybody tell? So there are situations, but then again, you need to use your head to ask yourself, well, does it actually make sense to try to explain what does this thing do in business language? Especially if you have kind of complex situations or tricky situations in the business, you say, well, yeah, I have this and this and this, and if I do this, then I get something out. It makes sense because it doesn't improve the unit testability, but it does improve understanding of the domain. So why does it happen, right? That said, in most of the cases, what you really look at, your unit test, kind of that test functions, they should just be written like that. And the acceptance testing, or like, you know, high-level flows, they should rather be expressed as Cucumber test scenarios, because they force QAs and a business to answer the questions. Well, how can we test it? How can we prove that it actually works? And so kind of, I find that the smart combination of this, in fact, is beneficial. You happy? Or do you want me to rephrase something?
No, that's good.
Yeah.
I have one.
Yeah.
So you said to be able to write those scenarios, you need a concise domain grammar.
Yes.
Is that compatible with rapid iteration, potentially MVP-ish style work, or just evolving code bases that I think most of us work in?
Well, actually, any code base is compatible with it. And what perhaps I want to rephrase concise grammar. When you talk to business people, they will tend to describe what they do in 10, 20, 30 different flavors. So if you write 10, 30 different regular expressions to parse the same, it becomes a hell. So what you try to do, you try to say, well, let's agree on how we call things. Like, okay, so do we have, for example, a purchase process? Do we have a purchase process, or do we have money spending process? Kind of, let's agree on how we call things, and that actually helps.
Then let me narrow it down a bit. Let's say that I work on a code base where we decided for some reason that we didn't really get the domain model at first. And then we want to change the domain model to better match how we talk about things. Or how we, Does that mean we have to get rid of the scenarios? Does it mean we have to change all of them? How does that combine?
Excellent question. And I have certainly seen that in that big build that I was talking about, because as we were, let's say, refining our approach to how do we produce deployment descriptors, we did invent new constructions, and it's great that you come up with it. The thing is, yes, you end up refining things. However, you have an advantage because you don't refine the whole thing. You just have concentrated steps. If you have done your domain right, then you just change what needs to change. But then, yes, Cucumber, same as RSpec, also evolves with your domain.
No one else has a question. I got another one. One of the things that put me off Cucumber when I used it, I haven't used it for a while, but was the debugging part. So like with RSpec, it's very easy for me to throw in a pry line trigger at some point in a test, and then figure out why a test is going wrong. But how would you do that? Is it any easier now with Cucumber? Especially, I can imagine like throwing pry lines into the glue code could be quite cumbersome.
That's an excellent question. Actually, I have not tried debugging this with Ruby. I do have recent experience debugging this with Java and Go. No problem. So use essentially the same thing. You start. You put your, let's say, breakpoint. Boom, you got. What Cucumber kind of runtime is? It's just the interpretation of this text into the glue code, which is essentially kind of just your regular test. That's it. So no problems at all.
Okay.
And that was the last question. You may still have questions. If they're about fantastic regular expressions, you can talk to Des or potentially to Aleks. And then we can prepare her for the next talk. So, but first, I want to thank you for your talk. It was very nice to have this thing. Okay. Oh well. Thank you. I think. And this means some drinks for us will continue in a few minutes. Also, he just said regular expressions we all love. We have that on tape, by the way. You may want to have this on a t-shirt. Which brings me to the point that our sponsor OfferZen over there, they want to have our opinion because there's something with, rock stars, I guess. So we need a more Ruby-esque t-shirt. Some nice people over there. You can sign up for the. She's waving. Hello. They're having a OfferZen community newsletter, and if you sign up for that thing, you can also help come up with a t-shirt, potentially with that line. Potentially no. It's going to be a Ruby-esque. Anyway, and then after the break we will meet Gys, and he'll tell us how to, be leading not horribly. Doei!
Yeah.
Anyway, so there are three more topics that I want to cover before we go to Gys and listen on how to not be a terrible leader, which I think is heavily overdue. Anyway, let's talk about that later. So, first point is, except for some speakers, we also usually have speakers. So we're going to have a talk by Gys, but also we want to have a talk by you, or you. Yeah. There are some people that want to talk. There are some people that do not want to talk. There are some people who have no experience whatsoever. People want to talk about bit masks, I've heard. I mean, if there's something that you want to listen to, yes, no, yeah. possibly, maybe. Anyway, so yeah, if you have a talk, come talk to us. We can help you if it's the first time, and that would be fun to see if we can get you accepted. And then you'll be standing here and feel all the stress. Also, you can talk to us if you want to become a sponsor. Means your company might be set back a few euros for pizzas, drinks, and you have all those nice peeps, us, in your office. It's going to be fun. If you're hiring, usually that's a good thing, then try to get us in. Talk to us. We're nice people, usually, most of the time. Anyway, and then there's another thing. It's called Rails Girls. And I had to explain what Rails Girls is, so I'm just going to explain what Rails Girls is. It has nothing to do with girls. It does have to do with Rails. So it's an event where you teach, where we as a community teach people who have no experience whatsoever what programming is or can be. We use Rails for that. And there is a slight preference of when we have a ton of sign-ups that we pick the women because they are underrepresented. So if that is something that you want to do, on March 18, we're having a Rails Girls event in Rotterdam. You can't join. I mean, too many sign-ups, both people who want to learn and people who want to coach. But that is only the first event of the year that we have Rails Girls. We're going to have a Rails Girls event probably beginning end-ish of the summer, potentially maybe even already autumn. Yeah, we're talking to them quite soon and see if we can do that. So 18 March it will be in Rotterdam, then we're probably going to do it in Amsterdam again. So if you haven't coached before and you think you can explain, do it. If you haven't coached before and you don't know if you can explain, also do it. If you know people who want to learn how programming works, this is exactly what they want to be doing. Yeah, so we'll probably share this in some general channel later-ish. Okay. That means that we can now go to Gys. Hey Gys, you're back on the screen again. You're muted, you're not muted. Gys, you're going to talk to us about, well, techniques for terrible technical leadership. Why?
Okay, cool, thank you. I'm also curious as to why someone would invite a speaker to talk about terrible technical leadership, but if you do want to know how to be a terrible leader, this talk is for you. So yeah, without further ado, let me start. So maybe just something about myself. So I'm in Cape Town. I grew up in Ceres. I'm not sure if you know the Ceres fruit juice, but that is the place where that gets made, and that's like a significant part of the world's fruit juice production. So that's our claim to fame. I've got 2 daughters, which means although I enjoy sleeping, I don't get to do a lot of sleeping. I do enjoy nature and building things. That jungle gym is something I built by myself, although the manual said I need 3 people. My wife and oldest daughter helped, but they bailed after like 5 minutes, so I had to do it by myself. And then I've got a YouTube video with like 7.5 million views, which is just something, I guess. Okay, so I want to just quickly tell you about my story, like why I'm here and why I'm talking about this topic. So I am also just trying to figure out how to use this slide. Okay, so I actually started as a mechatronics engineer, building factory automation machines. It was fun, but the cycle time to actually get something to production when you are building something mechanical is like a year. So I didn't have the patience for that. And I sort of started dreaming about building robots. And around that time, one of my friends who is one of the co-founders of OfferZen, he started a startup accelerator and got me on board with the promise of starting a robotics company. Turned out to be quite difficult to do, and we ended up pivoting to just using computer vision to build gesture recognition software to power digital signage, which was an awesome product and awesome technology that we worked with, but business model, not so much, and we moved on from that venture. It's also the time when I actually started working in software and not just hardware. I then moved on to another company where we started building sort of just proof of concepts for large businesses, mostly financial institutions, to sort of help launch new product lines. And that's also where I sort of fell in love with Ruby and Rails, because it's so easy to build something in Rails so quick. So most of the projects that we actually shipped was done in Rails. And yeah, about I think 90%. And yeah, after that I joined OfferZen, and that was in 2016. I joined when we were, I think, about 7 people. We were only helping developers in one city, and yeah, we were quite tiny. I joined as the CTO, which I'm still today after seven years. And yeah, at the moment I think we're about 160 people at OfferZen. We're operating in about 80 cities, and what we do, if I'm not sure if you know what OfferZen is, but we're a talent marketplace, and our mission is to help connect developers with all awesome opportunities. So yeah, that's just a bit about myself. And yeah, over the years at OfferZen, I've been fortunate to meet a lot of like awesome people. And someone that I met during that time is called Pandolf. So, and he actually joined as a engineering manager a couple of years ago. And what many people don't know is that Pandolf was actually a leader at his previous company. He led like a team of 9 on like an epic mission. Pretty successful, but they ended up liquidating their biggest asset at the end of the mission, and after that he joined OfferZen. That was Pandolf's first tour of duty as like a leader or manager, and as such he wanted some information as to like what he should be doing to really be a excellent leader. One of his friends recommended that he should get Techniques for Terrific Technical Leadership by Aragon, which I'm being told is like a bestseller. But unfortunately, he got confused and got Techniques for Terrible Technical Leadership by Sagan. He was listening to it on an audiobook, and you never look at the title anyway, so that's his bad. Anyway, back to fast forward to now. At OfferZen, we have each quarter a book club where we look at a couple of books that people have read and then sort of discuss it. We all read it and then discuss it. And Pandolf suggested that we all read Techniques for Terrible Technical Leadership, which both horrified and intrigued us, so we did. And what I'm going to be explaining today is just like a summary of that book and what you really need to do if you want to be a terrible leader. Okay, so book is pretty short, only 3 chapters. The first chapter is all about preventing innovation, focusing on like hiring, how you structure your team, and some design principles. Second chapter is about disempowering your teams, and then finally creating a toxic culture within your company. Okay, let's dive in. So first chapter, techniques for preventing innovation. So the first technique is a pretty obvious one. So what Sauron recommends is that you should always try and build a homogeneous team of individuals. And for Pandolf, it meant like getting just more Pandolf, more people like himself. Now that is might sound like a challenge, but there's certain techniques you can follow to do that. You can only source people within your own networks. You can run a biased hiring process, which isn't that difficult because, I mean, by default, hiring processes are biased and you need to put in effort to really make it unbiased. Also, you can use non-inclusive job descriptions, we want someone that's keen on playing paintball with the dudes on Saturdays. It's like a nice way to really make it non-inclusive for people. So yeah, it's essential to really like get people like yourself when you're building a team. And then what that does is it limits the creativity of that team, because you are essentially limiting the diversity of thought. You have people from similar backgrounds, similar similar tool sets to the exposure, and then you end up with just people solving the same problem the same way, and you get no creativity in the group. Okay, so that's technique number one. Then technique number two, keeping your developers isolated from everyone. So before many companies went remote, that was difficult because you had to have separate offices. You had to have one office where you kept all your developers, and then one for the rest of the business. You often had to like hire security to prevent any stray users from like going into the office where the developers are and talking to them. Going remote has helped with that. So you can like have separate Slack organizations and very convoluted processes for getting very highly detailed spec tickets to developers. But yeah, remote definitely made it easier. And essentially what that does is that you create user apathy with your developers. They don't understand what the real needs are for the customers that they're solving. They don't understand sort of the cost and the trade-offs that they need to make, and they end up just building terrible products with like a terrible product velocity, that's what you want. Okay, next one, embracing complexity. So I think often when presented with complexity, you feel the urge to really respond with simplicity. Kill that urge. Don't respond with simplicity. Respond with more complexity. That is the way that you should go about it. So there's like often people talk about Yagni. You ain't gonna need it. There's something else that I like more, which is Winy. You're gonna need it. There's a venture capitalist and entrepreneur called Paul Graham, who once said, like, live in the future and build what is missing. Obviously, time travel is impossible, so we can't go to the future. So let's just build everything. So nothing is missing when we get to the future. So really embrace that complexity. And what that will then do is it will slow future innovation. So, I mean, I think many of you have sort of seen that complexity manifest in a code base, and like the level of frustration and how it actually slows you down. And that's what you want. You want sort of both sort of product debt, tech debt, coming from like embracing complexity. Okay, cool. So that was chapter one. So if you didn't if you zoned out for a bit and didn't take in anything, that's fine, because chapter 2 is all about disempowering teams, because if you don't have a team, then you can't really innovate. So let's dive into that. Okay, so as a leader, some people say that the most important tenet for a leader is to be able to make decisions quickly and have them of high quality. So what Soren says is you need to embrace decision paralysis. Basically, embrace your inner sloth. If you are faced with a decision, just don't do anything. Try and like really embrace the principle of bias to inaction, and just like if someone asks like, why not today? Say like, why not next week? Just like postpone it as much as possible. And what that will lead to is like you will end up wasting both your most important commodity, but also your team's most important commodity, that being time. People will get frustrated. You will become the blocker for your whole team. So the more you can sort of just embrace decision paralysis, the better. So I think sometimes you do make a decision because like you can't just stall it forever. And then, but when you do and you need to take on specific actions, you need to make sure that you take on actions that are easy and trivial. And that comes, that is our fifth technique, embracing bike shedding. So bike shedding is based on the law of triviality. I think it's also the Parkinson's law, which essentially is something like organizations will always tend to gravitate to allocate a disproportionate amount of effort towards trivial matters. And the reason it's called bike shedding is, imagine you're on a committee for a nuclear power station, and you need to decide between what do we do with the nuclear waste versus what color do we paint the bike shed. And obviously, the latter option is the nicer one to discuss. So we're going to spend more time on that, deciding the color of the bike shed, because we want to deal with figuring out like what to do with the nuclear waste. And that's what you need to do. You need to understand like what are like easy tasks that are trivial to do and doesn't actually provide any impact, and really just try and like do those things. And if you do them, you also need to celebrate like finishing them, because what that will then do is it will build a positive reinforcement loop for yourself. So there's this theory about like building tiny habits where you where there's a trigger, you want to decrease the friction of doing something, and then there's a reward once you've done it. So given that trivial tasks by nature is easy to do, there isn't a lot of friction, so you need to reward yourself after you've done it so that you can do more of those, and you can get just that like cycle of doom going. So that's an excellent technique to keep in mind. Okay, so next technique is to overload yourself with work. Now, I'm not saying like work a lot and like do hard work. I'm saying use the previously mentioned technique, technique 5, to just like fill your calendar with a lot of like trivial tasks. So because what you want to do is you want to put yourself in a position where you can't really help your team. You need to, and you also need to show them, look, I'm doing all of these trivial things, which isn't actually that much, doesn't provide that much value, and instead of helping you, which sounds awful, but that's what Saran says. Okay, and then technique 7 is to be highly coupled and loosely aligned. Now, what I mean with being highly coupled is you can almost imagine if you have a monolithic code base and you have 50 developers working on that code base. Now you want, being highly coupled means like to get a PR approved, you need all 50 or 49 to then approve that PR before it can get merged. And you can set up like teams in that way as well, where sort of no decision, no action can be taken without like a big group actually moving in that direction. And then loosely aligned refers to being vague on what direction the team should be moving in. And there's ways that you can do it. You can have very sort of ambiguous goals where you provide some direction, but everyone interprets it in their own way. And you can use metrics to do that as well, but just be sure to make sure that no one really understands what those metrics mean, and also make sure that the goals are motivational, because you want people to be amped, but you want people to be confused as to which direction they should go. And what you'll find is that the team will sort of just work against one another. They will create no value, and they will just create a lot of frustration and chaos within the team. Okay, then technique 8, embracing the Peter principle. So Peter principle is pretty simple. That refers to essentially promoting someone to a position where they don't have the skill set or experience to do their job well. And yeah, it's a pretty simple technique. And the only thing you need to do is look in your team, see which of your team are performing very well at the job, force a promotion upon them, and keep on repeating that until they are in a position where they just fail at doing the job. And I mean, you see it often when you have a excellent individual contributor, developer, and you sort of force them to be a manager. So yeah, just do that. And what you'll end up with is you'll just make sure that everyone in your team is always failing, because you put them in a position where they can't win because they don't have the skill set and experience and the guidance to actually win. Okay, so that was chapter 2. Now coming to the last chapter. So if you do fail at doing anything in chapter 1 or 2, luckily chapter 3 is like a catch-all, because culture is the foundation of being a good leader. And if you really create a toxic culture, then you're going to be an excellent, terrible leader. Okay, so technique 9 is about creating delayed destructive feedback loops. So there's a book called Radical Candor, which was written by Kim Scott, where she talks about sort of the quadrants of how you can provide feedback to people. And there's sort of 2 axes. So the one is on the one side, you challenge directly, which means you provide clear feedback to the person on what it is that you want to communicate to them. And the other one is sort of indirectly, where sort of you're ambiguous, you're sort of dancing around the point and not really sort of being honest with them. And then in terms of the level of care when giving the feedback, it varies between sort of caring personally, where you start with the heart in terms of giving feedback, and just hateful annoyance, where you just mean and you don't really care whether the person succeeds or not. Now, this is an excellent framework, and it helps us to understand how to give destructive feedback. So we want to be in the hateful annoyance challenge indirectly quadrant, where we don't really care whether the person wins with this feedback, but we just want to be vague with what it is that they are doing wrong or right, and also just being sort of not a good human. And then where the sort of the delayed feedback loop comes in is that even with bad quality feedback, you can still use that to adjust your actions and to improve yourself. And we want to prevent that. So instead of having these weekly one-on-ones, just do a one-on-one or performance review once a year, and then prevent people from being able to be in a position where they can really sort of grow and sort of unlock their potential and learn from their sort of actions. So yeah, that's also one of the good ones. Okay, so if you've been following all the aforementioned techniques to the letter, then you will find that there is going to be a ton of conflict in your team. So you need to really make sure you know how to avoid addressing conflict. You don't want to be sucked into sort of the conflict vortex. And again, I think going remote has made it a lot easier. Previously, to get noise canceling earphones and just I think that was the best technique. But now you can just quit Slack, just leave the channel. It's easy to just be an absent manager remotely. So really try and avoid addressing conflict, because conflict fuels conflict, and the more conflict that goes unaddressed, the more conflict will arise. So it's like a cyclone, just warming up and warming up. And yeah, just ensure you don't get sucked into it. If you do, then don't resolve it, just pick a side, because that's the least bad option. Okay, and then coming to the last technique, it's the 5 WTFs. So I think that was developed by Toyota as part of the lean manufacturing movement, to really prevent you from getting to the root cause of whatever sort of problem you've been or incident you're facing. So whenever there's an incident, try and identify the person who was responsible for that, get the whole team there and ask that person in front of the whole team 5 questions like, WTF happened? What did you do? What were you thinking? What should I tell the board? Why are you still at the company? And yeah, like I said, broadcast this to the whole team, the whole company. Make sure to focus on the person and not the process in terms of talking about the incident. And what this will cause, besides just unhappy people, is also the root cause will persist. So you would never solve it because you would not try and like solve it, and it will repeat, and you will just keep on sort of going through like a loop of like an everlasting loop. Okay, so these are obviously terrible techniques, and just to be like very clear, you should not follow them. This is the second time I've done this talk, and I must say going through the techniques is quite painful, not just because it's like hard to say like follow these techniques, but also I can remember times in my career where I implicitly followed Sauron's advice because I wasn't deliberate in my actions. And what I think leaders, and not just leaders, but everyone should do, is develop like systems, frameworks, mental models to help them like avoid these behaviors. So yeah, I wanted to share some of the sort of techniques and tools that I've developed for myself just to prevent me from implicitly following Sauron's advice. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, like personally, I believe as a leader, one of the best attributes you can have is to make decisions quickly and also of high quality. And Jeff Bezos, I think it's Jeff Bezos, spoke about type 1 and type 2 decisions. Type 1 is where essentially you are stepping through a black hole. There's no going back. It's a one-way door. Unless you are Matthew McConaughey, you're not going to get out of that black hole. It's like a decision that's made and it's hard to reverse. And type 2 is like a two-way door where sort of you can step through, you can see what's on the other side. If you don't like it, you can reverse your actions. And having those two mental models helps you identify the severity of like the decisions that you're making and the effort you need to expend in making that decision. So with type 1 decisions, we use a framework at OfferZen called Rapid. I can't remember which company invented it, but not us, where essentially you have one person that comes up and explains, okay, this is a problem I've identified, this is the solution. Then there are a couple of people in the business who might be affected, and they need to provide input into the solution and explicitly agree or disagree with the solution. You only have one person that is accountable for deciding, and that is the person normally who is accountable for that part of the business. You might have some people giving input and just providing a bit more context, and then you are clear who will be performing the actions once the decision is made. And we try not to, we don't use rapids that often. It's only for like big decisions, like I said, one-way door decisions. But we try and like do it within 2 weeks max. I think the last one I did was only 2 days, so you can definitely make it. You can make it quickly if you move fast. Then type 2 decisions, like I said, is like you walk through the door, you see what's on the other side. If you don't like it, you reverse your actions. So that is we use problem and propose solution for that. So what that means is that anyone in the team can identify a problem, propose a solution, and then the person accountable for that specific area makes the decision on the spot because it's not that consequential whether the decision is that good or not. The idea is more that speed matters more than the quality of the decision when it comes to type 2 decisions. And what we have as well is we've got a list of areas of responsibilities, which helps with this type of or making these decisions, because it's easy then to see, okay, who is responsible in the business for actually being able to make the decision. And we try and do it within no more than 2 days. Okay, then so what I've found definitely scaling from like having a team of like 3 people to now having a team of 50 people is that you need some form of framework for yourself to stay sane. Otherwise, it's just, you're gonna crawl in a corner and just not function anymore. So what I started doing is I started each week creating a week plan for myself, where within that week plan, I have 3 buckets. What am I focusing on? What's in the backlog? What are wish list items? And who am I supporting on what? And the way I sort of create this is whenever something comes in, I ask like, is this something only I can do? If it is, then I ask like, is it important? If it's not important, then it goes into the wish list bucket. If it is important, but it's not urgent, it goes into the backlog bucket. And if it's urgent and important, it goes into the focus bucket. And I actually can't remember the person whose framework I'm copying, Stephen Covey, I think, yeah. He had like a similar framework, which sort of helps you decide how you should be allocating your time. In terms of like understanding who I should be supporting, the first question I need to ask is, does the team have capacity? If no, then you can't overload your team. You need to take it then upon yourself. Then if your team does, delegate it. Depending on the task relevant maturity of the person, that meaning the level of experience the person has performing in that role, you can take 2 types of approaches. The one being low touch feedback, and that's when the person have a high TRM level, or if it's a low TRM level, just high touch guidance. And yeah, it's important to sort of distinguish between the two because the approaches are quite different. And yeah, that is essentially how I get sort of my week plan. And then each week I just evaluate all the items again. I say each week, but so often it's like bi-weekly or well, fortnightly, because yeah, don't get to do it each week. And then lastly, and that's one of my colleagues, our head of engineering, taught me this, and I find it to be excellent advice, is as a leader, you should always sort of step back and like understand where are you in terms of are you above the line or are you below the line? Below the line, you are closed, you're defensive, you're committed to being hurt. If you're below the line, you can't really sort of be creative, help the team solve problems. You need to get yourself above the line where you are open, you're curious, you're committed to learning, you're keen to solve the problem with the team and not sort of be defensive and solve it yourself. And just this is a super simple mental model, but I found it incredibly powerful to really understand where if you are, and there's a book, Leadership and Self-Deception, which describes a similar concept where you're in the box or out of the box. Okay, and yeah, just some closing thoughts. Yeah, like I said, definitely never follow this advice. I want to make that super clear, just if I wasn't clear enough, it's terrible advice. But what I found is that often it's useful to imply the inversion mental model, where you identify what are the opposite goals that you, or what's the opposite that you should want to achieve, and you can use that then to identify the actions that you should be avoiding, instead of just focusing on like what the goals is you want to achieve and the actions that you need to achieve those goals. So just flipping it around, and you can do it with anything, helps you sort of view it through another a lens dimension, and yeah, can help you be a better leader. Okay, I think that is it. I know there were some talks of questions, but
It was really hilarious, the talk. There were so many people just giggling all through it. I mean, the second part was a bit dramatic. How to say this? This was the really beefy thing, but it was really hilarious. So very well delivered, Gys. Hey, I see a question from Wander. I'm going to move there with my mic. So this thing is on.
Like principle 1. And there's a bit of an echo. Yeah. So the principle that they failed, they did get a diverse team. They completely failed at homogeneity. Anyway, like they didn't just have a variety of genders, backgrounds, ethnicities, but even worse, they had a difference in experience, right? So we had both juniors and senior people, and I wonder if you could share some of your wisdom in how to get like the least out of both your juniors and your seniors.
Would you mind just repeating the question, the last bit? I just
we can't hear you.
didn't.
Give me 1 second.
Would you mind just repeating the last bit of the question? I just didn't follow the juniors and the seniors bit.
Well, most importantly, the question is how can we get as little out of our juniors as well as we can get as little as out of our seniors? So, how to if you are in a company where you have all these kinds of.
I'm not sure if you're talking.
Not the remote.
Okay, and you're asking. This is like a question for Sauron. Is that correct? Okay. Got it. Well, he didn't cover that part in the book, but I would say that having similar goals, I think you having similar goals, like having similar not. Okay, I need to like apply the inversion mental model now to like try and give you a good answer. It's also like an hour later in Cape Town, so so I'm not the sharpest at the moment. But yeah, I think at least what I've found is that if you don't recognize, and that's me talking now, not Sauron, but if you don't recognize sort of what you expect from seniors, what you expect from juniors, and like how you want to sort of grow juniors into seniors, and how you want to like the different sort of growth goals you want to establish for the different levels in your engineering department, then yeah, you end up sort of preventing or putting your juniors into sort of the beta principle, and then also almost like not giving enough like micromanaging your seniors. So yeah, sorry, I don't think that's a good answer, but best I can muster. Yeah, that's a good question. So what we have a couple of ways that we do it. So I think Intel or Google sort of Intel developed OKRs, and then I think Google made it famous. But having OKRs is one way to do it. In some of our teams at OfferZen, we find that works pretty well. We, within sort of our product teams, we try and simplify it even more. We have specific business outcomes that we want to achieve within a quarter and a year, and we can link product metrics directly to those business outcomes. So, and I think what is essential is, and I alluded to it in the talk, is like having a data dictionary that you know exactly when you talk about like monthly active users, what does that mean? Because is it just someone visiting the site? Is it someone doing a transaction? Using metrics, I think, is key, but you need to be clear on like what that metrics are. So, I mean, I do still feel that like having good decision-making frameworks is key. Like I said, like personally, I believe the velocity of the decision is often more important than the quality of the decision. I don't think we find ourselves doing type 1 decisions that often. So, and I mean, that's something that I do as well, like really like educate your leaders in like how to make decisions quickly. And yeah, so that doesn't solve for like a full calendar. I'm not sure what to do there, but yeah, I think like educating your sort of leaders in your organization of like how to the importance of like making quick decisions, and that quality of decision is not as important as speed. Building that conviction, I think, is key. Yeah, I think I've luckily not been in a situation where sort of I had to really reintroduce it. I think maybe just to revitalize it. And what I found always work is to focus on sort of the mission. So I think people often talk about sort of you really want to build a generative culture where sort of the focus is on the mission and not sort of on sort of specific functions or like specific like your needs as an individual, but like how are we as a team going to accomplish the mission? And coming back to like what's the mission of the company, like why is it important, what's our promises to our users. I found that as like that is a way that you can step back and actually just see the forest for the trees. Okay, thanks for having me. Bye.